Hi guys, welcome to the last night of 13 Nights of Halloween. I hope you've enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed making it. I'm definitely coming back next year. So, to close the first year in the series, season 1, I quite honestly saved the best for last. Today I'm back with my author sandwich and I'll be highlighting Rachel Harrison. I'm not sure you have seen my first episode in the author sandwich, but it's a series I started and I'm picking up again in which I review the first book an author has ever written and the most recent or last book they have written, and in the middle I just gush about the author because I just reserve these for my most favorite writers. Today I'll be highlighting Rachel Harrison. She is a magnificent horror writer that I simply adore. And let's build a sandwich, shall we? First, you can't start a sandwich without choosing what is going to hold your filling, can you? Usually is bread. Today, I'm going to invite you to get a little bit outside of the box. And the bread for the sandwich is a pumpkin loaf. And I am talking pound cake here. So for this, it would be a pumpkin loaf with dried cranberries and toasted pecans. So for a pumpkin loaf, I'll bring the first book that Rachel has written, also the first book of hers I have read, which is The Return. I'll start by getting spoiler free, and I'll warn you when I get to the spoilers because I cannot talk about this book without pointing out certain things that happen way later in the book because of the way they made me feel. In The Return, we follow four friends: Elise, May, Julie, and Molly. They have been friends since college and their relationship has survived many things that life has thrown at them. They are thick as thieves, but their dynamic is surely to change when Julie goes missing. When Julie goes missing, Molly and May take their time, but eventually they move on. But Elise never lets it go. She is sure that Julie is still alive, or she's hanging on to that hope that Julie is still alive and is waiting for her to come back. She's in a place that is of unacceptance and she simply can't move on. 2 years later, Elise was actually right. And Julie comes back, but she does not come back the same. Not only is she somehow different, she has no memory of how long she's been away or even where she was. Sounds amazing. So let's get to my overall thoughts on the book. As far as his characters go, I think the four friends were very well drawn out. They not only were clearly four individual people, you could see how their dynamic was affected, and you can see how the relationship between them was almost like a fifth friend. It was really alive and nuanced, and I cannot gush enough about Julie and Elise. They were such multi-dimensional, compelling characters. I find it's quite impossible not to feel what they feel, and unfortunately for a lot of it is a lot of pain. So this is definitely an unpardonable book, but it's not a light read. At least it wasn't for me. And I'll get to it in the spoilers. I've loved it. I read it twice already. I actually just ordered the hardcover because I wanted to match my Cackle. And I will tell you, I believe I read this back in April. It's still with me. Like, for the first 2 weeks after reading this, I just couldn't stop crying. But that was a good way. It was very cathartic. And I still carry with me almost as if it's a baby. That's how much I cared for those characters, and that's how much the atmosphere pulled me in. Talking about the atmosphere, this, in order to, I think I jumped ahead a little bit. These four friends are trying to deal with Julie's return, and that's not very easy, especially because Julie is afraid to see them, but finally, a couple of months after her return, they agree to have a girls' weekend. And they go to this very interesting, thematic, atmospheric, dark hotel in which each room has its own theme. It was scary in a way, but so well described. I wish I could visit this place, but I really don't want to go there, if that makes any sense at all. But so they are on this getaway of sorts. The choice of place, the hotel, and the characters' fears and frustrations and anger and unresolved issues all contribute to this overall feeling of foreboding, claustrophobia, darkness, and anxiety. Everything you want in a horror. You want to feel unsettled, and unsettled I felt. From the get-go, I was already so intrigued by the story. I was making theories even before I started reading it. And I loved how the third act, it leads almost to an open-ended climax. And by that, I mean that I took one thing away for it, but I can see how some people might see something else. I think it's almost one of those ends that speak to you in your mood. It's open-ended enough that I can see what I saw and other people can see something completely different. Okay, I think we're getting close to the spoiler portion because I know I'm being vague, so I'm not sure what Rachel's intention were when writing the book, but you can read it as an entertaining book, a horror book, and let it be that. But I read it through a lens of grief. And I believe reading through that lens is why I felt so touched, distressed, and connected to this book. So, feel free to skip, I have timestamps, feel free to skip to my next timestamp if you don't want to hear spoilers. Hope you stay if you read the book, and if not, jump and continue to see me. For the first half of the book, I was wondering if Julie was actually a vampire. Because there were some hallmarks, and I thought that's where the story was going. I was still down for that, but when it started becoming clear that that's not what it was, I was Elise. I got into Elise's frame of mind. And from then on, my reading experience completely shifted. I've lost two very significant people in my life. I still talk to them in my head. Sometimes, when the grief is strong, I get angry that people moved on. I sometimes find it hard to accept they are dead, and I don't think I have completely moved on at all because I don't think it's fair that they are not in my life anymore. So I can completely understand where Elise was feeling. And this goes sometimes for friendship lost. You can grieve over many losses. Unfortunately, my loss is something that cannot come back because it was, a loss to death. And some characters will feel this presence around them and suddenly feel cold, and that's exactly how I feel metaphorically every time I hit a milestone in my life and I can't share them with my dad or grandfather. So it made sense to me. Everything from that point on was such a beautiful, again, as I read, metaphor for grief that I could relate. My mind was being spoken through those words. And as the book progresses, starts deteriorating physically, but that's such a good metaphor for loss, because when someone dies or when someone is not in your life anymore, you don't lose them at once. You still hold on to your memory, but as time goes, you start to forget their smell, the way their eyes shine when they're smiling, or the voice. Sorry. You really start forgetting all those things, and when you remember, you start doubting that this is actually reality, and you try to grasp the reality because you don't want to fantasize them. You don't want to idolize something that never existed, because in that way you also losing them even more. So I understand that. And I think in the past few years I've experienced more losses that I can't count. So going back to Julie, I could also understand her from a point of view of survival. She died unwillingly, unexpectedly. She was not ready to go. And if you have a chance to come back to the one with whom you share a bond and you're not ready to let go, wouldn't you? I don't know. I think most people would at least consider that. So I can really understand why Julie came back and why she fought so hard to sustain it, even though she lost herself in the process. It's not quite the same, but I relate this to my breast cancer battle. There was that part as you change. It changed me, as I'm sure death changed Julie. It's a quite powerful, crippling fear that can last a long time, or it can be very evanescent, of letting people see you at your most vulnerable and what you've become, and they fear that they liked and loved who you were before. But are they going to accept you as you are now? For those reasons, I loved the return, and the grief that evoked in me was cathartic but heavy, and I still care with it. This is one of the best books about grief, in my opinion, and it's deep, poetic, beautifully written, with relatable characters, and all done the creepiest way possible. So yeah, I love it. I couldn't recommend The Return enough. Now, let's move on to the spread, shall we? And I have a question for you. When you put some spread on your sandwich, do you make sure you cover the whole surface? I cannot eat a sandwich if the whole bottom and top is not covered. And quite typically, I like playing with flavor, so that's kind of what I'm doing here. Our spread is going to be Cackle. And for our sandwich spread, I want you to imagine some goat cheese mixed with Dijon mustard on one end, and on the other, mayo mixed with sage. Trust me, we're getting there. This is going to be a savor sandwich. I'm building it because this is how Rachel makes me feel. It's like better during the fall spooky season, but it's good all around. And it's a mix of great things that go well together. So should we talk about Cackle? This is gonna be a very maybe erratic review because I literally just finished the book and this is like my first impressions. I will write down a blog about it in the next couple of weeks, where I'll make it be more coherent in my thoughts, but please stay with me, and this will be completely spoiler free. Cackle really illustrates how well of a writer Rachel is, because the tone of the book is completely different from The Return. It is so light, so funny, so witty, but it still has its very horrific moments. And again, we have a strong female protagonist, and in the mix of it all, we have a journey of self-discover and friendship. So Annie has just broken up with her boyfriend against her choice, decides that she can't live this like this anymore, quits her job, moves upstate New York, and decides to start fresh. In there, she meets this beautiful woman that takes her under her wing. She is ageless, charismatic, gorgeous. I won't lie. Just a second, Ralph. I won't lie. When I was reading it, I kept imagining Sophie as Monica Bellucci. That's my Sophie, because she's one of the most beautiful women I have ever seen in my life. She is a great actress, but she has all the qualities that I saw in Sophie. So, if you read the book, how do you imagine Sophie? I'm curious to know. I'll just give you my review and then my personal experience with it, because it was very interesting. As far as Cackle goes, it was a fast-paced read. The characters are wonderful. Rachel really does know how to write female characters with aspects that if you don't relate completely, there will be points that you relate. They are so true to life and true to feelings, and they really are manifestations of thought processes or insecurities that we have had. And Annie is me, she is all of us. We all have been there at this moment in life where you've given yourself so much to others that you don't really know how to take your power back and how to do things for yourself. I mean, I know I felt so many times that guilt of saying no to others, even though it hurts me to do what I just committed to. Why do we do that? I don't know. I know that we all at one point or another, and if you're there, bravo, I'm not. But the journey to self-love is not easy. There are so many distractions in life. There are so many paths of lead resistance that are more tempting. And this is a journey in which Annie goes in Cackle. But she has the help of Sophie. Sophie is this empowered woman that wants Annie to be her best self and find her self-worth and her self-love and self-acceptance. And she's very magnetic in the way that she does that, but at times it can be really intense and scary. Sophie at times read like the little voice inside your head. You know, the little voice that tells you, don't say yes, you know it's gonna hurt you. You can choose yourself, it's okay. And their voice that at the moment sounds so fantastical, you don't listen to, because you truly believe that what the voice is telling you is completely unattainable, when it's not. It just takes courage. So Sophie is kind of that voice. But she's also more than that. She is someone who has gone through that and has the patience to hold your hand and take the brunt of the hardest parts of the self-love journey. Both of them were just beautiful. I simply adored Annie. I was there with her journey. I mean, I'm not telling you exactly what happens, but there were moments where it got creepy that I was like, who And some moments that, I was just tearing. It was delightful. That's what this book is. Delightful. So well written. Like, I'm in love with Rachel's prose. So now let's get to the fantastical about this book. Again, I'm just gonna share some personal experience that you might or might not believe or want to hear. So again, you can just jump to the next timestamp. If you don't want to hear, that's fine. But I just want to put it out there because it happened to me and I thought it was really, really cool. I had this very almost bizarre experience reading this book because honestly, it felt like Rachel got parts of my soul and putting in here because there are things that were completely mirror of my life. For example, Ralph. That was actually the name of my first pet. True story. And this was so cool, and I swear, it's not a joke. Okay? When I first got this book, I don't know if you can see that, but that's the blood of a spider. That when I opened the book and I checked the naked cover, because I always like to see it, she was there. And then we had some more, take my word for it, it's hard to make it focus and now my light changed. I honestly don't even know how that is possible. But when I reached page 46 and 47, there was actually a live spider that was climbing through the book. I ran to my phone so fast because I wanted to record it that the spider was so tiny and it flew. But there was a live spider on this chapter, charming new friend. So I made sure to pay very strong attention to this charming. And there are, you see all these bookmarks. Those are all things in this one chapter that I could relate to. So maybe the spider was telling me something. Inviting me to go on an inner journey. I loved, just give you like tidbits because there's a lot. But a lot about being exhausting to be in your head. And I'm in my head all the time. Loving early September and walking and considering those to be some of the most perfect days of the year. And that feeling when you walk around and you talk to people and you get smiles back is like drinking warm tea. Going camping with your dad or having that feeling of complacency in a relationship when you've been together for a long time. Sophie's library was like amazing and to die for, and I love reading, and I would love to have the library, and loving movies, loving storms. I mean, it can go on and on and on. Whether was it through Sophie or Annie, that chapter was full of breadcrumbs of my life, and I thought that was pretty cool that there was literally a spider showing me that, and I paid attention and I did some searching reading it, but yeah, I can relate to them. And let's go back. Atmosphere, check. The book was scary when it needed to be, it was intense when it needed to be, it was light, it was funny, it was witty, the characters were so relatable. And another thing I love about both and the way Rachel writes is that she writes in a way that is so visceral. I had the same feeling I get when I listen to some classical music while reading both of her books. For me, The Return is definitely Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. The music evokes the same feeling in me than the book did. And Cackle is definitely, for me, Mozart's 40th Symphony. They both just give me this feeling. It's like as I listen to them, I can feel it is literally visceral. That's my experience. So since I'm already talking about things that I love about Rachel, they are both some of my favorite books of the year. I've read them this year. I am a fan. I cannot fault Harrison's writing. Her prose is everything. So let's get to her, shall we? I've gave you the bread. Let's make it an author sandwich. I will share with you things I love about Rachel Harrison. And this is our filling. And bear with me. The filling is going to be roasted real turkey breast and Gruyere cheese. Trust me, this sandwich is going to be so good. But why do I love Rachel? I mean, I am a little delusional here, but as you said, as you saw, I have a very intense relationship to the way that she writes and the way she represents the women. So, to her characters, basically. I know this is not the case, but I hope you have an author that you feel that writes just for you, because that's how I feel. I can go blindly now that I've read 3 of her works. Sorry about the angle change. My battery died. Well, anyway, Rachel is an author that I can go in blind and know that I love what she writes. It will take a lot to disappoint me. She is so talented. She has a deep understanding of female emotions and female relationships. She's clearly someone who has navigated some tough emotions in her life or has helped friends through it, because the way that she described these emotions and life tribulations is so insightful. She is the cutest. I follow her on Instagram and Twitter, and they are linked down below. So please go show her support. And I have also left her website where you can go and check her latest news. I think she is definitely a great horror author, and she has impeccable taste, because every time I see her on an interview, I am that person. I'm looking behind on the books, and all the books that she has on her shelf are amazing and books that I love. She gave recommendations in Joraline's video once, and I loved the book that she recommended. I thoroughly agreed with her, and she really is bringing something new and fresh to horror. She brought in a creature that not everybody really writes about in that book, but a version of, and it was through grief. In Cackle, she has an amazing witch, and spiders play a big part, and I thought that was so fantastic. I almost want to get a spider pet. I won't, but the way that she represented the witches and used that for her plot is not something that you really see done in horror. And again, grief, I understand, which I've been accused of being, and it has been my favorite. Well, let's call them monsters, but they are not, because I believe they are real. It has been my favorite monsters I love. I have always loved books and movies about witches and witchcraft. And guess what her next book is going to be about? Her next book that comes out October 2022 is called Such Sharp Teeth, and is about werewolves. It's about this woman who is bitten by a werewolf and navigates her newfound powers. And Rachel has described her book, Such Sharp Teeth, being about rage and vulnerability, love, and the relationships we have with our bodies. And I really love werewolves. And it's funny because as soon as she said werewolf, this is a creature that I have been fascinated by since I've become a mother. I don't know, like motherhood brought the werewolf in me, and I'm really attuned to their misses now, and I'm not really satisfied about lots of the mythologies and books that go over there. So I cannot wait to see a more human deep side to werewolf mythology. So I'm looking forward to it. So I'll give you a little spoiler alert. As long as Rachel continues to release books in the latter half of the year, every year, the last episode of 13 Nights of Halloween, I'm gonna close with a review of her book. I've decided because I want to honor this woman that honors me through her writing. What's missing on the sandwich before we grill it in the panini grill? So about a little bit of an optional flavor booster. I'm not going to do a review here because then it wouldn't be an author sandwich, but I'll let you know that Rachel has also written The Veil, which is a short story for Audible only. If you have an Audible membership, you can listen to it for free. And it is an Audible exclusive, so I highly recommend that you listen to it. It's 47 minutes and it's a very delightful, we're talking ghosts here, but there's already that kind of like self-love and who you are and compared to who you are in a relationship scene. It is almost like the same journey Annie went on, but a different path. You know, it's going to be well written and you're going to relate to it, and it's going to be about female empowerment because all her books are. Hope you pick up a Rachel Harrison soon. Follow her on the socials and show her a lot of love and support. We need more of her voice in the horror world. That's what I'm saying. That's what I had for my 13 Nights of Halloween. I hope you found at least an episode you enjoyed. If you have any tips or recommendations for me to start thinking about for next year's, let me know. And also let me know what is your favorite horror movie, horror book, and your favorite read this year. Do you read to get in the mood for the spooky season? And if you celebrate Halloween, what are you going to be dressed up as? Thank you for joining me. I will probably take a 2-week break and I'll come back mid-November. See you with my regular programming next time I see you. And that's what I had. Until next time, be the hummingbird. Bye.